The reason for asking for what is appropriate for now is because there are a number of people who are carrying a number of sticking points. Let's call it that. Resistance is a better word, but sticking points. Obviously, it would be best case scenario to clean them all up. We got to work on the foundation first. We're building foundation here. So in some of the clearing that we're going to do right now, some of the cleansing that we're going to do right now, some of the releasing of resistance that we're going to talk about right now is the foundation upon which the further growth will happen. If we don't clear that up, no matter how hard you work, and we'll talk about that one later too, how hard you work to get up to here, if the foundation is not clear, the work is kind of like hut on stilts, and it's a little bit precarious. Okay? So let's use the concept of a hut on sticks. Imagine a country where you've got water coming in from the ocean, and you've got people who are living in huts which are on 4 corner point sticks. So it's above water level there. You can see the water below. If you kind of had a hole in the floor, which some people might do, they would call it maybe a bathroom or a toilet. You can see the river, or the ocean kind of ebb and flow below there. So a house built on sticks is one which is rather precarious because when high tide comes, the house starts to move. Okay, so imagine you don't have big concrete pylons holding up this house. This is like, we're not going to give you geographical location, that's not the important thing here, but imagine somewhere, for example, like in Bangladesh or that kind of area corner of the world, where there could be people whose place of residence is a hut on sticks. That's all I got. And when the high waters come in, when the tide waters come in, or typhoon or monsoon comes in, depending on the strength or the intensity of the power of the sticks to hold the house up, it might start to sway a little bit or it might start to sway a lot. So what we're talking about here is the water that we're talking about, the tides coming in, or it could be a typhoon coming in, it could be a monsoon coming in. Those tides and the water coming in are what are felt in the emotional environment. That's kind of the vibration of the emotional environment. So we're thinking about the tides being kind of like emotions that we experience on a day-to-day basis. If you, in your physical being, become the one who's representing the hut. Now, we're not going to do my body as my temple, though we're kind of tempted to go there. But anyway, if you see yourself as being, okay, my who I am in the world, how I am in the world, how I see myself, and everything that I contain and see myself in this container of what I'd call a hut is on these 4 stilts, for example. And if ever the emotional environment around you becomes high tide, becomes monsoon, becomes typhoon, whatever it happens to be, and the hut starts to move a little bit here, which is the stability of the inner self, let's call it that, the stability of one's way of that one sees oneself, actually, but the way that you take it. So it might be the stability of yourself, but the way that we take it personally, or the way that you would take it personally, is questioning the validity of the structure, let's call it that. So the validity, the strength, the value of the structure. How much value is there in the structure? How solid is the structure? If high tide can come in there and kind of make my house move like this, if I can walk through an emotional environment where somebody's angry, or somebody can call me out in anger, or somebody tell me a story about them being in anger, and I'm in any way shaken or kind of swayed a little bit by their conversation, or by what I've witnessed, or by what's washed over me, then the question becomes, when I'm questioning myself and my stability, my ability, that which encapsulates all of who I am, if that's ever in question because of what I've been washed by in the emotional environment, I got to check the power of my stilts, let's call it that, the intensity of my stilts, how plugged in are my stilts into the firm ground there. And the question becomes, for many people, now if you're, for example, building a house on sticks or a hut on sticks or stilts, you have no control over the quality of the rock bed underneath the ocean, for example. Unless you're building a concrete foundation, you have no control over how deep that foundation goes until it becomes hit bedrock, let's call it that. So the question becomes, if the hut, which is on kind of precarious little stilts there, which could be swayed in the emotional environment, which is the waves and the water coming in, is a reflection of how strong am I in my knowing of my being and my resolve to not let anything sway me in any way and take me away from the strength that I know. The question becomes, how do we build the strength in the foundation if you have no control over what's down there? So let's look at this. Look at a relationship. If your relationship is with family, with other individuals, with work, doesn't matter who it happens to be with. If you're counting on other people for your stability, that's a good way of putting it. If you're relying on other people to define or describe or identify what makes you feel stable, and it's not a solely personal thing, you're kind of giving up your power. Let's call it that. So this message for this one here, now we're finally getting to the point. We've got a lot of rambling on going on there. This person is giving up too much power. This person is giving up too much power to other people in the emotional environment who are kicking out the stilts every once in a while, or the tide's kind of rising with the emotions in the environment, which cause one's self to feel kind of out of alignment or being swayed in a certain direction here. We want to talk a little bit about momentum. That's going to be the next one that we're going into. But when there's momentum building, when momentum is, I feel anger, I witness anger. I feel fear, I witness fear. For example, we'll take two biggies. The one that we really want to talk about is I feel and I witness love. That's the ultimate one. But when I witness anger or fear, and when anger or fear, which is ignited in others or fanned by others, which becomes the waves or the tide that's washing around me, when that causes me to feel a lack of stability in myself, the question becomes, how do you get that back? And you can't, for this one here, you can't get it back by finding somebody else to set down stronger stilts for you. It's got to be self-work. The challenge becomes this one here who's been working so hard on themselves. This person has been working very, very hard trying to gain stability, trying to gain a sense of stability, better way of putting it, in a very wavy, tumultuous emotional environment. When one is trying to gain stability in an emotional environment that one has no control over, and one has no control over the foundation about where you're putting stuff down there, our answer for how do you gain your stability is to not look to anyone else to give that to you, but to open up to understanding that you are the one who's responsible for establishing that foundation in the first place. So we're talking foundation in the first time here.